Hi, I'm Lanny, and this is Preserving Today. All right, today I want to share one of my made up canning recipes. This is not tested, safe, or approved by any scientist or lab. Please proceed at your own risk. A full and complete understanding of the safe home canning guidelines, why they say to do what they say to do, and how you can safely break those rules if you should choose to, is extremely important. So please do your own research and come to your own conclusions and have fun canning in your home kitchen. I love canning in the wintertime because the house is cold and it's a great way to warm it up while you're being productive. There are a lot of things that you can can in the winter months. Canning is not just for summertime and harvest season. There are certain things that I do can while they are still ripe and growing, and those things are items that don't freeze or keep well for later use. So I can apples, applesauce, apple pie filling. Same with pears, those don't last very long. So we do pear pie filling, canned pears. But when you get into berries, if you're wanting to do jam or pie filling, those things are fine to freeze because they're going to break down and squish anyway. You're not trying to maintain that texture. So you can put those in the freezer and save them for later for canning in the winter if you have the freezer space, as well as with tart pie cherries. Those are great for saving until wintertime to can, like you can see in this other video. But this project is inspired by the fact that I had some grape juice left over from summertime. I was lucky enough to have a friend that had a lot of red wine grapes. They might have been merlot grapes, and they totally tasted like wine, but without the alcohol. So I froze these using my super cubes, which is an excellent product. Turned these into 2-cup cubes and put them in a Ziploc bag and put them in the freezer. I know I needed to use these. And in the middle of cranberry season, I was thinking those things might make a good match. So I grabbed a 1-pound bag of fresh cranberries and I rough chopped these in my food processor. Then I used the 2-cup blocks of frozen grape juice, which is a total, of course, of 4 cups of frozen grape juice. And I added those two things to a pot together. My goal here was to make something somewhat like a jam, but because of the pectin in the cranberries, I wasn't going to need to use any pectin at all. I added honey to this to sweeten it. At this point, I realized, wow, I could make something that's similar to mulled wine. It would probably be really good. I made this nice little sachet of spices. I put 1 star anise, a couple of allspice berries, a clove or 2, and a cinnamon stick, and I tied it up in this cheesecloth and placed it in there to cook down. I simmered this on medium-low, stirring occasionally until things started to thicken and most of the cranberries were really broken down. When I was done, I ladled this into my half-pint canning jars, wiped the rims and removed any bubbles, and added the flat lids and bands. Of course, after preparing my water bath canner, I lowered these jars into the hot water bath canner using my jar lifters. And I processed these half-pint jars in my water bath canner for 10 minutes. After which I turned the heat off, waited 5 additional minutes for things to settle down before I used my jar lifters again to carefully remove these jars and place them on a towel. Waited for them to cool completely, like at least 12 hours, before I wiped down the jars, checked the seals, and labeled them with the contents and the date. The reason I'm confident this is a safe recipe is because the acidity in the grape juice, as well as the acidity in the cranberries. I used very little honey to the recipe and didn't add any other liquid that would dilute the acidity. If you're not sure of your acidity, you could always add extra lemon juice, even adding a teaspoon of lemon juice to each jar. Making sure this is acidic enough is what's going to make it safe for water bath canning. Any non-acidic foods are recommended to be canned in a pressure canner. I was also making sure that this recipe wasn't too thick by adding any thickeners. There's no pectin, there's no gelatin, there's no clear gel, there's no flour, which isn't recommended for canning anyway. Nothing to make it so thick that the heat won't penetrate through the food appropriately. So with the acidity and the thickness in mind, I realized this recipe is pretty much just like any jam recipe. I just made it to scale using what I had on hand instead of going to the store to buy something specific. This recipe turned out fantastic. It had just the flavor I was expecting and tasted something like mulled wine. This was excellent served alongside brie and some crackers. My kids have also just loved it on toast. And we've also spooned it over homemade vanilla ice cream. So tell me, do you make up your own canning recipes, or do you only follow scientifically proven USDA recommended recipes? Let me know in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe and check out my other videos for more wintertime canning projects. I'm Lanny, and this was Preserving Today.